90% of startups fail, but that's the brutal reality. So what about the 10% that do succeed? What separates them from the rest of the pack? Our guest today has built and scaled multiple successful businesses, defying the odds time and time again. And today, he's going to share with you how you can do that too. Damon Rasheed is a serial entrepreneur and pioneer in the tech industry. He started off building several internet startups, leveraging his love for big data and maybe a little bit of gambling. He has over 20 years of experience in economics, big data, and machine learning. So let's understand how he did it.
Like playing blackjack professionally, card counting, like discipline, money management strategies, time management, scalability. It's the least scalable business.
Why startups fail is usually number one, they run out of cash. Number two, there's no market need for the product or service.
Yeah.
And number three is being outcompeted. I suspect you've encountered all three. Would love to hear how you have encountered each of these and then overcome those three challenges.
You know, there's a common thing that you should have diversification of opinion as well. Like if you read management textbooks and particularly in the public service, like groupthink can actually be quite good for in particular for early startups.
Okay, let's crack into it. Damon, so you've founded several successful startups. I'm curious to pick your brains in terms of what made you make the leap from a steady, stable corporate job, I believe you were in economics, into maybe the uncertainty of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, thanks for having me, David. I guess my journey's a bit different to most. I actually started as an entrepreneur straight out of high school. I read this book called $1 Million Blackjack, and it was all about card counting and blackjack and how to make money from the casinos. And I decided that's all I ever want to do in life is be a professional blackjack player. So probably for the next 4 years, as I was studying part-time, most of the time I was in casinos playing blackjack around the world, making money and getting banned from all the casinos. So I actually went from that career. Once I got banned, I couldn't earn any income, so I actually went back to economics in a corporate role. I joined the ACCC, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, as an economist in the mergers and acquisitions branch, which was like an awesome job. But yeah, and then after a while doing that job, probably 2 years, I was running some side gigs on the weekends, building websites, and it got to the stage where those websites are actually making more money than my regular job. So my transition back to entrepreneurship was quite a straightforward one. There was low risk because I was already doing better salary-wise than I was in the corporate world. So it led to a really smooth transition, and I didn't have to take a big risk or anything like that.
Yeah, wow, that's super interesting in that you're already an entrepreneur to start with, because most people go the other way. And I'd like to pick apart that debate in your mind. I know you said it was pretty easy because in terms of remuneration or financial return, it was pretty easy. But were there other things that you sort of thought, but I'm doing M&A, mergers and acquisition at the ACCC.
Yeah.
Become, I don't know what the senior role is called, like a senior partner or something like.
Oh, I mean, a lot of my colleagues that worked with me at the ACCC in those days are top level consultants or very senior public servants now, earning serious money, but also, their roles are pivotal to policy making in Australia. My wife, in fact, is the chair of the Productivity Commission, and we went through uni together doing economics. So, that pathway in itself, there's lots of opportunities, for people that study economics or statistics. And the other side of things is that you can go and do your own businesses, which I chose to do.
Aligned to that, and I'm just thinking, wow, your household, super clever. I'd love to sit around for the dinner conversation.
We work as a team and do it my wife's way.
That's a clever answer. Aside from sort of having all your side gigs and the websites and things like that, how did you prepare yourself both personally and professionally to go into the entrepreneur world and run your own show?
Yeah, I think just like an opportunity at the time presented itself, which was just too good to refuse. It involved a lot of, I was a lot younger, it involved a lot of travel to Europe and the US, and just a really interesting role. And yeah, I saw it just as an opportunity too good to refuse. In terms of preparing myself, I don't think there's anything in particular that I did to prepare myself. I didn't go and, podcasts back in those days weren't a thing, or YouTube. I probably read a few books, management books, etc. But I don't think I probably went in underprepared, if anything. Like today, there's so many resources available for anyone that wants to follow this path. But back when I started, it was a lot of suck it and see.
Yeah, right. Was there some sort of early career experience, and maybe it was the playing blackjack that gave you that courage? Because to your point, yeah, there's a lot of animosity. You didn't have resources to turn to, but you had the courage to be like, yeah, I'll give it a go.
Yeah, I think that particular venture, working out, playing blackjack professionally, it showed me that I could do it. Well, there's nothing stopping me running, my own race. And actually, blackjack is there's so many life lessons that you can learn from like playing blackjack professionally, card counting, like discipline, money management strategies, time management, scalability. It's the least scalable business you could possibly have, because you have to sit at the table and play for hours and hours. So then I started training up other people to get scalability, right? And I take a percentage of their winnings. So and then that comes into staff management. So it prepares you for so many aspects of business that I think those 2 or 3 years that I spent doing that really prepared me well.
Yeah, that is such a cool way to start. And I was going to offer to be one of your disciples if you're still there.
Maybe.
Now, startups aren't easy, as I'm sure you've experienced. The 3 most common reasons why startups fail is usually, number 1, they run out of cash. Number 2, there's no market need for the product or service.
Yeah.
And number 3 is being outcompeted. I suspect you've encountered all 3. Would love to hear how you have encountered each of these and then overcome those 3 challenges.
Yeah, the running out of cash one is obviously very common and the most stressful. The biggest mistake that I see, and perhaps I was guilty of this in the early days when it's a startup, is that you don't run the operation lean enough. You think you need all of these people, you hire them, and it turns out that if you're scaling and bootstrapping a business, you don't need all of these people. So I would highly recommend, if it's a startup, keep the operations as lean as possible. That would be one of my key suggestions. And also, like, running out of cash, closely tied with that is the ability to raise new cash. So I would also say that try to get to first revenue as quickly as possible, so that that validates the business model and puts you in a position where if you do need more cash, it's easier to obtain. The no market need one is also a common problem, or maybe the market changes as well, right? You had this great idea, you've developed it, but something else comes along and you have to pivot. So I think with the no market need is, you have to do some due diligence up front and see and see what the appetite for the market might be. And it's a lot easier these days. There's lots of tools that can aid in the old days you had to run focus groups with marketing companies to figure out if you have a product. These days, there's so many tools available. Is it like you could even ask language models and get answers for that sort of thing. But I think getting to MVP as quickly as possible, which is in line with the last point, first revenues and MVP, but also think that you might have to pivot if the market changes. You always need a pivoting strategy, especially if it's a tech startup, because something might come along that makes your product redundant as it stands at the moment, and you might have to quickly pivot. I can think about the biggest advancement we've had in machine learning in the last decade is language models, which have made a lot of traditional businesses redundant. So can you pivot? Do you have a pivoting strategy? That's important. And your last question about being outcompeted, I've got like a strong view on this. If it's a new product and to market, I actually don't see competition as a bad thing. I've always thought that a rising tide floats all boats. So if you've got, particularly if you've got a newer product, having some competitors validates your product a little bit more. And we're going to talk about Trial Key later, but we were like first to market with that product, or one of the first. And now I'm seeing competitors, and I actually feel good about that because it's validating our approach. And if the market's big enough, and if you've chosen a market that's big enough, you can coexist. So like being outcompeted has never really bothered me as much as probably the first two that you mentioned, running out of cash or no market at all.
Yep, it sounds like because you've got such a great product, a lot of confidence in it, so I guess when you're top of the food chain, you don't worry about what's
that's right.
Yeah, fair point. And guys, if you are thinking about starting a new business, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below what some of the challenges you've had in potentially new startups and running your own business ideas. We'd love to hear from you. Now, Damon, as you've developed your entrepreneurial acumen, what are some key lessons you've learned that helped you evolve into the serial entrepreneur you are today?
Yeah, key lessons. Like the number one thing is you've got to surround yourself with good people. I don't proclaim to know, like my field's machine learning and data science, but I don't proclaim to know everything about that area. There's like people that I work with are way better at knowing what the emerging technologies are and current capabilities. So you've got to surround yourself with the right people. And particularly in a startup where you've got a small number of staff, having one bad egg can really, I call them, organizational terrorists, can really disrupt a startup. Like I can't stress enough. I've got this thing that if I wake up the next day and someone's not working for me and I feel happy, or if I'm not working with someone, then I should have probably done that like 6 months ago. I should have made the change. So I think surround yourself with good people. There's a common thing that you should have diversification of opinion as well. Yeah. Like if you read management textbooks and particularly in the public service, I'm not actually convinced that works, because you get like groupthink can actually be quite good in particular for early startups, because everyone's got the same mindset. They're driving towards the same outcomes. Sure, you need to question things along the way, but if it's too confrontational as a startup, you never get anywhere. So I'm not so sure that groupthink's a bad thing.
Yeah, I think getting caught in the analysis paralysis.
Yeah, exactly.
We need to move. So that's super interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I suppose based on key lessons that you've learned, and you talked about when you first started, not many resources, but now we're in a 2025 where there is a plethora of resources. Yeah. Are there any particular ones you would recommend to budding entrepreneurs, whether that be books, podcasts? I know you talked about surrounding yourself with good people. Are there meetups? I see on Instagram, I know there's I forgot the name, but there's like meetup groups, like, meet other entrepreneurs in your local city, go play basketball or whatever that may be. Yeah. What are your...
So I think the circles that I mix in, I'm fortunate enough that it's a lot of people that have started their own business, a lot of entrepreneurs. But I think that just comes organically when you actually, become that yourself. I don't go out and seek meetup groups in those areas particularly. Where I do seek meetup groups is in areas where I'll have an interest. So if I want to learn something about, a machine learning technique that might be cutting edge, I'll look at the meetup groups. I might go to a few presentations. So it's more, a learning thing for me rather than a networking thing. I'm just personally, networking for me, I find really difficult. It's more, I look to resources that could help me in my business. There are some good podcasts out there though, that I'm a podcast person more than reading books. I think the last book that I read was Steve Waugh's Ashes Diary, which came out. You might not even know who Steve Waugh is. He retired that long ago from cricket, but I think that was like 20 or 30 years ago was the last book I read. But podcasts, there's one called The Masters of Scale. I think Reid Hoffman is the founder of that. They have lots of topics on that website and covered in podcasts. So I do find those podcasts quite interesting. But I think I don't know what you find when you're talking to entrepreneurs, but I think most of them are so invested in their own businesses they don't have a lot of time for like these outside materials. That's just my observation.
Yeah, agreed. I think time is precious for us all, right? But podcast, walking, that's a great way to, I suppose, kill two birds with one stone. So the Masters of Scale podcast.
Check that one out. They've got so many topics, and it's always a good discussion.
Yeah, perfect. I'll post a link to that in the description.
Yeah, and your podcast as well, of course. So don't miss that one.
Yeah, for sure, guys. And if you are finding the entrepreneurial series quite interesting, I'd love to hear from you. Let us know, because we are doing something a little bit different with getting more and more entrepreneurs onto the channel. As you can see, success in entrepreneurship isn't just about having the right idea. It's about adaptability, resilience, and execution. And no doubt there are going to be a lot of pitfalls and failures on this journey. So click here for part 2 of our interview with Damon as we leap into how entrepreneurs think, make their decisions, and how they importantly stay ahead of the curve. You won't want to miss it.